You're an interventional nephrologist, so procedures are your life, and this is what it's really like. So that's good. So this is another episode of So You Think You Can Doc. This is Dr. Ali Gardezi. We're going to kind of walk through a bit of his life, and we're going to start with how he got here, right? And this is kind of helps define where we are and what we do by starting off with where we started. This is kind of the most boring question that you've probably answered a million times in your life, but why even medicine?
Yeah, no, it's, where I grew up, medicine or engineering was a default. There were not a lot of other, good career opportunities.
So yeah, that's yeah. So there's good career opportunities, but when you're a young child, you're not looking for what are the career opportunities. Mm-hmm. So and if your family was like mine, those were the choices that you were fed. That these were the only choices that you should be pursuing. Is that the way it was?
That's exactly it was. Yeah. So most of the parents those days, if they noticed that their kids were good in studies, they would lay this out to them. You either become an engineer or you become a doctor.
But that's a key point, right? So the were you good in studies? And I guess what I'm getting at is some people are not, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean the parents are going to change their minds necessarily, right? They're still going to be saying, like, this is what you need to do, or else you're going to end up doing this or doing that, and you won't be happy, or you'll be like me, or maybe you want to be like me, depending on what the me is in that situation. So was it at an early age that you kind of stood out or separated that you were doing well in school?
I think that is true. I was fortunately, good in studies and kind of stood out. And probably my parents realized at that time that, if they give me that direction, I'll probably be able to get to that. It could also be that, my father wanted to become a doctor and, he couldn't get in. So you always get this as well, right? That, if parents, they are not able to achieve, what they had hoped for themselves, they want to see it in their kids.
Yeah, that's true for some. And then there's another group, right? There's this other group of, well, it's not really obtainable and I couldn't do it. And, I don't want this kid to waste their time. And, I couldn't do it, so they shouldn't do it. And then they steer you away. So obviously, that didn't happen. Right? Because some people are facing that, right? So you have a group of kids who are, at a young age, it could be in Pakistan or anywhere else, and they're really good, but they may have parents who are just kind of like, don't waste your time chasing that dream. So do something and then you have other kids who are going to have a really hard time with this because they don't get it as easily. And then they have parents pushing them to become, all of these things. And they're fighting. And I have both in my family personally to say, and both of them. I've seen two of my cousins on the opposite end of those spectrums. Both make it through in different ways, but they got there. So you're in Pakistan. You were in Lahore?
No. So my dad was in military.
Okay.
So as part of a military family, we just moved every few years. But originally I'm from a place called Multan, which is about 4 hours drive from Lahore.
Okay.
Yeah. But I barely lived there as a kid. So we're just moving from one base to the other.
Now, just for some perspective, Pakistan, what's the population of Pakistan?
Pakistan is the 5th most populous country in the world. So,
wow. I think,
it's about 260 million.
Nobody knows that except Pakistan. And maybe India. And what I'm getting at is you have these cities that are huge. Lahore is what population, approximately?
Probably 20 million, a little over that.
Right, so New York City is like 19 million, right? These are comparable to the largest cities in the United States. And I grew up in New York City, so for me, there was always this feeling of you're just lost in the sea. And you're never going to be the best at anything because there's always so much of other people. And I think this is one of the things that the newer generation does suffer from a bit because of, Instagram and TikTok and this, that, and the other, and everything is like, you're the best or you're nothing. Where I was just happy to even be in or a part of anything because I didn't know any better and I'm not seeing everybody's the greatest at whatever they do. But in this C, you're making it through. Did you feel like, hey, I belong here, or was this a struggle?
And, fortunately, it wasn't too much of a struggle. One, I think it was probably just the support of the parents, Also, I would say as a kid of a military person living on the cantonments or bases, we were still in a bubble. Yeah, rather than having, exposed to big, huge cities with a lot of people and, around you, or, you go to a school and, you have 1,000 kids, and it becomes difficult. It wasn't like that for me. That was, that was probably an advantage from, that perspective where, I didn't have that much of a struggle of, but yeah, once you get to the medical school, then what is happening, especially in countries like Pakistan, whoever is coming to the medical school, they are coming from the same, story or same background like me. They're good in the studies, they stand out in their school, and, their parents have pushed them to go to medical school. So once you get into medical school, that's where I did feel that,
right, because you've got the population of the United States, basically, right? Maybe slightly less, and now you're taking the best of the best, you're putting them all to compete against each other, and even if you were the best, you're not going to know it or feel it when you walk in that room, because everyone is, of that nature. Are there a lot of medical schools in Pakistan?
So there are a lot now. So when I went to medical school, there were not much. So it was really difficult to get into medical school.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, right? In the United States, we have schools in every state, multiple in other states and this and the other, but so you're really competing with a tight group here to even get into to medical school. Now you're in medical school, you're with all of these, alphas and whatever, the top of the best and this, that, and the other. Obviously, there's initially this feeling of, wow, what am I getting into? What is this? Do I even belong here? This, that, and the other. But how long does that last? It's a 5-year.
It's
program,
a 5-year, and one difference is that you get into medical school right after your high school. So here obviously you do your bachelor's degree first, and then you get into medical school. But there, 12th grade, and then medical college admission test, and then if you get it, you are in. So I was 18 years old.
Right. There's going to be a lot of 17, 18-year-olds.
Exactly. Yeah. So that just makes it a little bit more harder, to certainly adjust to.
You've never lived a way of life, and now suddenly you're there. All of this is just hitting you.
And then, the class is about 200 to 225 people. So we had, those huge, lecture theaters, and first day, you enter the class and you see, oh my God, 250 people sitting there. So yeah, it does certainly open your eyes. You're not the only one. There are a lot of other people who are like you or even better than you.
Right. And you don't know at that point, right? Everybody talks a good game, right? So, but there's 5 years of it. You're in, let's say your second or third year, and are you feeling more comfortable now?
Yeah, no, I think I would say probably within first half year or so, because then by the time you realize that almost everyone is like you, because they have chosen the same path, they've done the same struggle, so they're not very different from you, and you feel more anxious or intimidated if the environment doesn't feel, if it feels too foreign to you. So it felt like that in first few months, but then you get into routine and, you settle down. And again, it was extremely busy. You also didn't have a lot of time to think about that, with all the studies.
That's the way I felt. It was just like, you're so busy, you don't have time for this. As a matter of fact, I remember the first time we were doing anatomy, and there was a body, and it's like, okay, who's going to make the first incision? And people moved forward, and I moved backwards. By the end of the week, I was so far behind that I was eating and cutting at the same time, didn't care about, what was going on there. Yeah, people were similar. Were there a lot of people with a military background?
Some,
Okay.
not a whole lot.
So do you think that played into, some discipline and as well as, coming from a military family?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
helped
definitely. Because one, you are from a military family, so you see that at home. And second, when you're on a military base, your school is also, run by military. So even in the school, you have the same discipline, you have a uniform, you have to have your hair neat and cut, you have to have your nails cut, you should be neat and clean, all spick and span, you have to be on time, you can't go out of your class, for nothing, you can skip classes.
So discipline is not an option, right?
Yeah,
You get that
it's
kind
not
of
an option.
embedded into you, and obviously as you move forward in life, you don't have to do all of those things, but you probably still carry some of the the ability to do it, right? And then you have kids and realize this is not possible to pass on. But that's a different story, right? So, it sounds like at a young age, you're kind of guided towards, medicine, engineering. Okay, obviously it's medicine, was where, you ended up heading. But you didn't have, I assume at a young age, a concept of, I want to be a nephrologist, or I want to be even in the United States, right? This was just, medicine or engineering. And there is obviously a demand for people wanting to come to the United States and practice here. Was that the general feeling within in the medical school, that a lot of people were trying to get the residencies or whatever it is, or was it just a smaller group?
Yeah, no, so there was a general feeling that you would want to, get excellence in whatever you want to do. So in order to achieve that excellence, you would have an option to continue your career or your training in Pakistan, or try to find opportunity to go and train abroad. Mainly it was either United States at that time or UK. And traditionally it was UK because, Pakistan was under Great Britain for over 100 years. After independence, it was natural for people, to try and go there, if they want to be better in terms of their training or whatever career they choose. It could be medicine, could be something else. So when we went to medical school, there was, that information that, if you want to become a good doctor, you want to get excellent training, then your option is you either go to UK or, you try to go to the United States. In terms of, whether you want to become a nephrologist or a cardiologist, I don't think that it was there in the beginning. Probably definitely not at the level of informed choice, where you know exactly what these different specialties, what people do in that. But, maybe overall general, thing that, you've seen a doctor and, you like that person and that person happens to be a cardiologist. And you kind of idealize that person and you want to be a cardiologist or a surgeon. My uncle was a surgeon. I idealized him. I thought, I would also want to become a surgeon. That was the initial thing. And then actually with anatomy and, going through the years in medical school and surgery and all that, that actually kind of solidified. So when I finished medical school, I wanted to become a surgeon.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and then that's what I did in my internship. I did internship in surgery, then internship in medicine as well after medical school.
When you say internship, you're talking about right after medical school in Pakistan.
Yeah.
So you do your internship in surgery there, and then residency?
So in Pakistan, there is internship, which you have to do for 1 year. And now it is more diverse in the sense that you do more rotations in different specialties. But in a time when I graduated, you chose 2 specialties and you did 6 months in each of those specialties.
Okay.
And most of the people did general surgery and general medicine because that was the base, and then on top of it you can build up to the residency. Mm-hmm. So most of the people did that, or if someone was interested in OBGYN, they would tag OBGYN with it. But I did 6 months of general surgery internship and then 6 months of general medicine. And I excelled. I did my best in general surgery and I was happy. As an intern, I did 16 appendectomies, a couple of hernia surgeries, laparotomy. So that I was very happy to do all that and wanted to do that. And then at that time for surgery, it was, the better pathway was to either do or at least do the surgery residency within Pakistan and then, try to go to UK or Ireland and, there you can probably try to get the fellowship, in a subspecialty.
All right, so you do the internship there, the residency there, and then you're potentially, let's say you're doing surgery and then you're thinking about vascular surgery or something like that. You do a fellowship straight in the UK.
Oh yeah, but you go there, you may have to still do a few years of general surgery there.
Okay.
Not as a trainee, but maybe as a junior faculty,
Okay.
or and then you may be able to get into a fellowship in one of the specialties.
And that's different from the US where
Right.
you have to redo your whole residency, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was the common pathway which people used to take at that time. So that was one option. Obviously, the other option was going to the United States, and that was actually gaining traction by that time. Because before, if I go back in the 20th century, before 2000, most of the people used to go to UK. There were more opportunities. But then when the European Union, when they became part of European Union, by law, they had to prioritize the UK nationals first and then the nationals of the European Union. So that made it more difficult for people to go to the UK and get additional higher training there. So that's when people started pivoting to United States, and more people started looking into United States as an option. And then in the United States, obviously, as you just mentioned, you have to do everything all over again. You have to do your residency and then, you do your fellowships. And surgery is a competitive field in the United States. And you probably know that as well. It's harder to get into a surgery residency compared to a medicine residency. So if you had planned to come to the United States, had to understand that you could try to get into a surgery residency. It may not be easy. You may have to switch your path and go into medicine.
Yeah, so at this point, you've done the internship, you've done the residency, and now there's this, we'll say a fork, but maybe it's not a fork because you kind of already at this point had in your mind that I'm going to try to go to either the UK or the United States. Were you married at this point? Or?
No.
Okay.
So I did the residency and did the internship. And right until the end of my internship, I was still thinking of getting into a surgery residency in Pakistan. And after doing the surgery, finishing the surgery residency, try to go to UK and do fellowship there, right until the end of it. But then here I am, many years. So what happened then? And it's mainly just the peers. Most of my close friends at that time, they all decided that they are going to try and go to the United States. And they basically talked me into that.
And it's an interesting point, right? Because we have all this input and people will talk about, okay, you have these influences in your life. They're your parents, they're your professors, and this, and the other. And then, and then parents are always correctly concerned about who their kids are around because their friends can influence them, whether it's, alcohol or drugs or which country they go to or end up living in, So in this situation, as your peers, which you could argue whether it was a good or bad influence later, but there's an influence, right? Yeah. And it comes most strongly from them. Go figure, right? And, as you're saying this and walking through the timeline, it sounds like there's this concept and it's very easy for people to kind of say, hey, you have to redo something? That's horrible. Or that's bad. Or I can't believe you have to do that. But when you don't do an undergrad for 4 years, this redo, it really gets you back to the same time. Essentially, as far as amount of years of education, maybe not age, depending on whatever. whenever you started, but it actually ends up almost the same, except you actually get more training because you trained and you trained, again. But at this point, so you're saying, okay, surgery is not the route, or did you try for both?
Yeah, so I tried for both.
Okay.
So, so when I pivoted to, United States and started looking into that, I knew that, it is going to be less likely for me to get into surgery. So, with that understanding, I just went ahead. And so when you're in another country, like here as well, you have to do USMLE. So in those days, and you probably went through the same thing, you had step 1 USMLE, then you had step 2, and then you had the clinical skill exam, step 2 clinical skills. Well, after that, you get EC. So we used to get ECFMG certificate after that. That's Education Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. So once you get certified ECFMG, then you are at the same level as an MD, or a DO here. So, I started preparing for that as my other friends were doing. And, once you do that, then you come over here and then you apply for residencies. At that time, you can choose which programs you want to apply. It could be surgery, it could be medicine, peds, whichever. And then it all depends on, how much weightage they give to your application, whether they give you an interview or not, and then where they rank you.
Yeah, and it all depends on also, the need and the shortages are going to give you more opportunities, for all of these things. So, at this point, you obviously, I'll say matched, but I don't know the correct term. You applied and got in, whatever,
matched, yeah.
For a residency. This is in New York.
Right.
And had you been to the United States before, New York?
Yeah. So the very first time I traveled outside the country was when I was coming here for the residency match process. So that's the process where you apply for residencies and you go do the interviews and all that. So that was the very first time I traveled outside the country. Arrived in New York, and it's interesting that those days were still not too far from 9/11. So there was still a lot of scrutiny, especially people coming from that part of the world.
You're coming from Pakistan to
then,
New York City after 9/11.
Right. And you're Muslim, and you have that name. So in those days, when you go at the airport, when you go through the immigration process, other people will get through the line and they'll get immigrated. But then if you are from a certain country with a certain kind of name, you would be sent to additional immigration processing. And, it probably took me 4 hours to get to the luggage carousel. And by that time, I could only find one of my 2 bags. I had to, put up application to find the other one. So, and then after 36 hours of traveling and everything, here I am in New York City at JFK with, 1 bag lost.
Who's with you?
It's just, someone who was friends with someone which I knew who were gracious enough to, get me in and, let me stay in with them. So, so they picked me up.
But so you traveled by yourself. You're going, we'll just say, across the world. You're going to New York City, which, you've seen big cities before, but not like this. Wow, this is, a big ocean to cross by yourself and walk into, you barely know anyone you're associating with, and you're walking into something that's hard, not easy to say, hey, you're just going to, I don't know, go do what I did, was like work at a gas station, or something like, this is not a simple thing that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to figure out everything, transportation and food and how to even survive. Wow. So this is a lot, it seems like you've taken most things in stride up to this point, and you, I guess, have either adapted or you found ways to not make things hard. Now, I've known you for many years, so I also know that you're a modest person and you're going to understate things, but you're also a very calm person in the way you react, in that you take your time to think about what should the next action be without immediately reacting or overreacting. So I can picture you handling all of these things a little better than most people would externally. But internally, this is chaos that that's occurring. And you mentioned the whole 9/11 thing. Okay, well they know when you're coming through immigration, passports, and and you're coming from this country, this and the other. But after you get past that point, and you're in New York City, this is post 9/11, and I was in Miami. I grew up in New York City, but I was in Miami at the time, and I can tell you, walking in the streets in Miami, this is very far away. People were yelling at me and this and the other. And now you're in New York City. Okay, we're past the passport and everything else coming in, but you still look like how you look. Right?
Of course, yeah.
So this is a really rough environment that you're walking into and walking through. And now you're in residency. What was your first feeling? Again, like when you went into medical school, it's like, oh, these people are going to be all like this and the other. Did you have that kind of expectation? Like thinking I'm going to be doing residency with all of these best of the best, all the ones who got in here, right? Whether it's from whatever country or from the United States, you're now competing, or with them. Was it the same kind of thing?
Yeah. You do get that feeling, especially, before your first day in the residency program. So, just stepping back, because you asked about surgery, I did apply in some surgery programs as well, and then medicine. And then the surgery program where I went and interviewed, they had preliminary surgery and they had categorical surgery. So preliminary surgery is something which you do for 1 year as a transition to go into some other specialty. So what they offered me was that preliminary surgery, which was 1 year. Then I came to that crossroads where should I take this chance and just take 1 year of preliminary surgery with the hope that maybe that would get me to a surgery residency, or whether I should not take a chance like that. And, I had interviewed in some medicine programs as well, and just choose that medicine program and not take chance. And, and then when you're in that, all those things, 9/11 and, what's going to happen with your visas and all these come into play.
Yeah.
Because on one side, you're just getting 1 year of job and 1 year of visa, not knowing what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
On the other side, you're getting a categorical medicine residency for 3 years. You'll have a 3 year of visa. You'll be able to finish your training as well.
You've got security. You've got something
security,
guaranteed.
right?
And I imagine potentially if you're back in, in Pakistan and you have the same decision to make, it's different, versus here you are, and this is a big gamble, and you're essentially out here alone, flying by yourself. Right. So you're in residency. I'm sure you realized, like I did, after you're in residency, this isn't that hard, and these people aren't as scary, and this and the other, and maybe it was even harder in Pakistan, But at this point, you've also had more experience than all the other first years, and you're learning and you're playing the game, but it's not as hard as it's kind of made out to be.
Yeah, and then so obviously before you start, you don't know what you're going to see and what's going to happen, right? So, but then being a foreign medical graduate, most of the time you end up in an inner city hospital where when you step into that program the first day, most of the residents you will see would be like you.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's definitely going to be more diversity in the study. Exactly. There'll be a lot of foreign, but also even the patients and the other staff, right? You're going to see, multicultural.
Exactly. So that was one advantage, I would say, in residency in New York. It didn't seem too foreign to me or my other colleagues who were doing residency with me. And then, I think that 1 year of internship, which I did in Pakistan, prepared me really well in terms of, coping with things, seeing sick patients, knowing, what critical illness is or, how to approach a patient and, not running and hiding in a closet, when you hear a code. So, so that helped. I think it did prepare me maybe a little better than someone who would come out right from medical school and on their first day of internship. But it was It was good. 3 years of internal medicine residency in an inner city Bronx hospital. It was hard because we didn't have much of residency, ACGME, hour, limits,
Oh,
and
restriction,
this and that,
yeah,
restrictions.
Right. No, we had
So,
well over 100 hours, and
exactly,
nobody
yeah.
was counting, and that's all. It's all true, and I think residency is something that you make it as hard as it needs to be. We all know people who coasted through residency and did not work nearly as hard as others.
Yeah, that's right.
And others who did, and they got more out of it, I'm sure, by working harder. But there's different. It'll do to you what needs to get done. Is what I think.
Right.
And somehow it'll end. I do want to kind of move you forward a little bit here and maybe skip a little, because you've gotten to a point where you almost kind of came back full circle, and you've essentially aspired to like the highest. There's many peaks and mountains, but there's a peak like within the medical fields where you then start to do things like interventional. So you go from this residency into a fellowship that was here. That's where I met you, and that's for nephrology. But then there's also this decision after nephrology, and I'm not going to go into specifically why nephrology. I think most people who go into nephrology, ID, or pulmonary, it's because they didn't want to let go of everything else and they wanted to hold on to it. It's one of those specialties where you still get to do kind of everything, but you still add something, right? But in nephrology, you're here and doing this fellowship, and whether you admit it or not, you're flying through it, right? We all knew that, right? when you were here. But then you'd make this decision about interventional training for another year, which is essentially, to me, it's screaming, this is me reaching back for my surgery I was looking for. Is that what was going on?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So there is a lesson in that, for me and for anyone, that you don't need to be extremely rigid with what you want to do. You look at the situation, and if the situation demands that you have to pivot and you have to be flexible and do something else, you do that, and eventually you are going to find something which would interest you. So that's how I thought about it. Nephrology, I developed the interest during residency in nephrology. A big part of it was the nephrologist I worked with. I thought they were the smartest people among all the faculty who I worked with, who would reason everything rather than just doing everything out of reflex. That kind of developed my interest. And then when I started looking into nephrology, that's when I saw that there is something called interventional nephrology where actually you can do something with your hand. And that interest, that generated the interest. So I knew about interventional nephrology even before I came into nephrology. And when I started looking for the programs, I deliberately looked for those programs where I would have the opportunity to train in interventional nephrology.
Right, and there aren't that many in the country.
There aren't many.
Right.
So this was probably the best one at that time. So I saw that it was no-brainer for me that this would be my first choice.
Yeah. So fortunately, you end up coming here. We ended up taking you. You do the interventional, nephrology fellowship, and you stay on here as faculty, obviously, and we're having this discussion. So you're here as faculty. I kind of skipped through maybe, but somewhere in there's a wife and children.
Right. So in Pakistan, we had that terminology that if you're coming to United States, for your American dream, medical American dream, you do step one. The USMLE step one, then you do step two, then you do step three, and then you get the residency, that is step four, and then you get married and have a wife, that's step five, and then you have kids, that is step six. So that's exactly how it went for me. Got into residency, and before I came and joined, I got married. It was good that I was able to get the residency, otherwise the marriage would have gone for another year.
Right, so now
I don't know if I would have been successful in staying in that relationship to get into marriage if it was another year.
Yeah. So and we go back to that decision about the 1 year surgical with the taking a chance.
Exactly. So this part, So the marriage part was also definitely influenced that decision. Yeah. So I got married just before I came here for residency, and then I had my first kid when I was a first year resident. So I did the night float, night call, and came home in the morning, took my wife to the hospital. She delivered just after midnight. So her doctor, when she found out that I had done a night call and I was awake the whole day, she actually brought a blanket for me, and she kind of ordered me to go and lay on the couch in the corner. So it was it.
And I had one in residency and one in fellowship, and this is again the time of no work restricted hours protection, and this is why we sound like this when we talk about newer generation.
right, exactly.
But so you're here, and a large part of your job is doing procedures. You just came from a kidney biopsy. You have to go now, like to a declot, is your next procedure. And and thanks for squeezing me in here in this time. But this is your life, right? It's procedures. In between there, you're seeing people on dialysis and rounding in the hospital. Is this what you wanted?
Yeah, no. I'm happy about it. If running around, seeing patients, and then run around to the other side, the procedure area, and do the thing which, I've always loved, doing things with my hand. Could not have asked for anything better. So, if I go back to the time when I was deciding between surgery and medicine, I would have never thought that one day I would reach the point where I would be able to do that.
Do both.
So I'm really thankful about it, that eventually I got to the point where I'm able to do both. Nephrology as a specialty challenges you. You have to think. You have to have good critical thinking of what's happening, and challenges you in that. And then on top of it, when you go to the procedure area, you have skills in your hand and you're able to utilize that. So it's best of both worlds.
It's interesting kind of hearing you walk through this, that there's always this concept of, keep doing or keep trying to do what you want to do, and people will tell you no, or obstacles, and overcoming them, and this, that, and the other. And yes, you overcame, obstacles. That's all true. But at the same time, you also took the opportunities that were in front of you. And to me, what that sometimes suggests is that somebody just has a faith that they will get to the place they need to be. And, sometimes that's hard to accept. It obviously worked out really well for you, but you took what, was there for you. And sometimes it's tough. It's tough for people to think like, hey, I'm sacrificing because this is what's available and this is what's not. But I agree with you. I think if this is what you really want and you don't change your mind, you'll find a way there.
Exactly. Yeah. You just have to be a little bit flexible. And if you're rigid that okay, I want this, and if I don't get this, that's the end of life. No, if you think through it and you look at other options, you will be able to find something which may not be exactly like this. It may be different, but it doesn't mean that it won't be as interesting as the other thing. So that's how I think. If you're not able to get into one specialty which you really love, you see what other opportunity you have, and whatever is closest to that.
Specifically, there wasn't I need to be a vascular surgeon or a cardiothoracic. You just liked surgery or procedures or using your hands as a whole at that point. So how you end up doing that could be from many. Do you think because you train a lot of people now. You're training people who are becoming interventional nephrologists themselves, and you look at what their lives are, and they go into private practice, most of them, and then but you're in academics as an interventional nephrologist, right? And do you think if you went to the private practice world, you would be as content with what you have, or is there a part of you that really is drawn to the academics?
Yeah, I mean, I love teaching. That definitely is something which you get to experience more in academics, so that is good. Again, as a person, I am flexible. If I had gone to private practice as well, I would have found something which would have, interested me and would have done that. So I don't think that it would have been
I agree with you. I get that feeling. Like you would have found a way to adjust that, and that would have been fulfilling as well.
Exactly. So it's it's not. But the thing is that the decision about staying in academics, it was one, obviously I saw the positive things, teaching and all that. But also it was a broader decision. The other things which kind of influenced that decision was this place. So we had been in Madison at the University of Wisconsin for 3 years. My family was really young when we came here, and we just loved the city of Madison. That was one big part of this decision. We had developed very good friendships. Felt like it was a place where we would want our kids to go, and we would want to stay here and build those relationships and friendships. Plus, I have had the opportunity to see, 2 different institutions, my residency, and then in between residency and fellowship, worked as a hospitalist for a few years. And then I came here for 3 years of fellowship. So I had these 3 places to compare. Mm-hmm. And just the environment of this place, and especially all of you guys, just seeing, if I stay here, what kind of colleagues I'm going to have. That also was a major thing in, making that decision. So the city, as well as the division and my workplace, both of these things influence this decision much more than anything else.
Good. No, I'm glad it's worked out. So, there's another thing I want to touch on. I think it's really pretty cool. So today, when I found you today, you had 2 observers with you, and they're both from Pakistan. Mm-hmm. They're coming and they're observers, and this is part of, I'd imagine, part of the path, or you get this exposure, and potentially you meet people, you find out about the system, maybe you get recommendations, whatever it is, to ultimately help your application. Mm-hmm. So, you're, in my opinion, you're also helping to give back or create opportunities for people who've walked a path or similar path mm-hmm. to you, but you also spend some time going back. I think next month you're going, yes. Right, to Pakistan. Mm-hmm. I always imagined, I don't know, maybe it's vacation, right? but you're also doing some stuff there, mm-hmm. right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, so people you met, observers, the main idea behind it is that they get to know the U.S. medical system, healthcare system, how it works. So, coming here, spending time with us, give them that, familiarity, mm-hmm. and that can be helpful to them when they are applying for residencies. It can be an advantage for them that they have seen the U.S. healthcare system up close and personal, so they would be a little better prepared, when they are able to get into residency and start that. But yeah, I go back to Pakistan every year. Obviously, main reason is to go back and see the family, spend time with them. But in addition to that, I also feel that if I'm able to give back something, I should try to do that. So what I've been doing is I've been working with the Kidney Institute there in my hometown, and either working on improving their interventional nephrology related stuff, or we would call it dialysis access, giving them feedback and kind of helping them develop some of those things, plus also developing some teaching opportunities there for the trainees. So yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
That's great. That's the full circle, right? Of being able to feel like, and then when you're going back, your parents are still there?
They're still there, yeah.
Yeah, still alive?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I can't imagine when you're coming back there and you're working, that's like, they must be so proud, right? Like to see that specific part of when you come back and do that. That's great. I mean, it all works out as a full circle. How are the wife and kids doing as far as being here? They're away from family as well, I assume.
Right. Yeah, they are away from family, but yeah, they travel with me and every year, and they're usually very excited to travel and meet the family. But yeah, they love it here. In Madison, they're born here, they brought up here. So,
right. So now they have all their friends are here. Yeah,
this is their place. They're familiar. As I said, Madison is a really good city.
So when you guys are all going to Pakistan, you're going home, and they're leaving home.
Yeah, but they call it home as well.
They do.
But because they've been going there.
That's what we say when we go to Trinidad too.
Exactly. They consider that, even though they would just spend 1 month a year there, but They have been doing it, since they remember. So they consider that home as well.
So how do you feel about the job timing, meaning the demand of time in balance with family time, or just free time or whatever, time other than the job? As an interventional academic nephrologist, I'm saying it specifically that way because private would likely be different, right? And non-interventional would likely be different as well, too.
Yeah, so, that's also personally a very important thing for me, being able to have enough time to, to be there for my family when it's needed. And being an academic interventional nephrologist, does give me that flexibility. So I would not be as busy as an interventional nephrologist would be who is working in a private setting. But if you compare general nephrology with interventional nephrology, especially in the private setting, most of the interventional nephrologists do just interventional nephrology. So if they are just doing interventional nephrology, then they are basically not working in the hospital seeing patients.
Right.
They're just doing
They're
procedures.
just kind of doing their procedures back to back.
And what that does is that they would be busy on the weekdays, from 7 in the morning to maybe 5 in the evening. But then they usually do not have calls in the night or on the weekends. So if they're doing only interventional nephrology, they're usually free on weekends. When you're working as a general nephrologist, you are seeing patients in the hospital. You would probably have to see them on the weekends. Sometimes you may have to go in the night and see the patients as well. So in that terms, if you do only interventional nephrology, you probably still have, some more flexibility. But personally, for me, it would not be professionally fulfilling because general nephrology was the first thing which I got interested in and wanted to do, and then interventional nephrology came second. So if I'm not able to do general nephrology and only do interventional nephrology, then personally it would not be satisfying for me. But different people would think differently. Some of our trainees who have gone on, they do only interventional nephrology. Some do a mix. Some went into only interventional nephrology and didn't like it, and then went back and made sure that they were able to do some general nephrology. So it's it depends.
Yeah, and it's tough to whenever we envisioned being a doctor, first we didn't picture even the medical surgical separation. Right. You just think the doctor do everything. Exactly. Okay, you sacrifice. Okay, just medical side. All right, now on the medical side, you didn't picture. Oh, I only do kidneys. I only do the heart. But at some point, all right, well, I'm a nephrologist, but I can still kind of do everything. And then it becomes, okay, well, now I'm just doing intervention. I don't want to lose, In this program, we have such a big transplant program that we don't even do transplant anymore. Right. So you start losing something. And I had a hard time with that initially. Because I was like, wait a minute. If I forget this, I'm never going to learn it again, right? And you have to start cutting these pieces off because realistically, you can't do everything. You can't be a surgeon and medical. You can't even do all the medical specialties either. So you have to just start accepting that you're going to know less and less. And when people outside of this talk to you as a doctor, thinking you know everything about doctoring, right? You don't, right? And you have to, admit to that. Maybe other than my wife, she's emergency medicine, so they have to, be ready with everything right away. That it's a little different. But this is a tough thing that I thought about a lot. I was like, oh, if I do this, then I'm going to forget all of this, right? If I just do this. But it sounds like you've got a good balance here. And I think the educational part of it kind of keeps you honest, right? Because if you have to educate people, you don't get a chance to go forget it. Right?
And then, that's how the, healthcare or medicine is evolving, right? Initially, you just had medicine and even before that, you just had a doctor, probably do both. And then you had medicine, surgery, and then you had specialties. And, nephrology is just a specialty of medicine. And then now within nephrology, we know, some of our colleagues are experts in one small area of nephrology, glomerulonephritis, or you're an expert
Right.
in stone,
Kidney stones,
or
right?
I'm an expert in dialysis access.
We have polycystic kidney,
Right,
hypertension.
Exactly.
You know,
so it becomes really hard to be able to practice all the different facets. So, but you can again adjust, right?
Yeah.
You be flexible.
Right. If
you have your own thing, and then whatever you can do beside it, take it.
Yeah, when you're not in a big academic center, you have to know everything,
Then
right?
you have
Because
to know
there's no one
everything.
else there. Maybe you just don't know it as well.
Right.
Yeah. So there are a lot of decisions to be made, and I think it's just important sometimes to talk about it or have people hear about it from people who've been through that decision making or walked that life. And that's what we kind of hope to really bring with this podcast, is that people can kind of see what our lives are, and maybe they get something from it that motivates them.
Right.
Anything else you want to just tell anyone? Or
this was great. I think it's excellent.
It's kind of fun to just walk through people's lives, because there's so many people out there.
Right.
Whether it's a directly parallel or not, there's always some intersection where it is overlap.
Right.
You can go on the internet and hear and read Reddit and little clips here and there, but to actually hear from a real person who has lived it,
right,
usually means more. Like your friends meant more at the time for the decision. In the United States, you never know where this influence is coming from. Right. So at least if we can provide an honest, real account, maybe we'll give one person the right influence. Right. That's better than nothing, right?
Yeah. No. This is I think it's really good. You are able to communicate that thought process, and that thought process can help someone else who's thinking.
They're all thinking, whether it's out loud or not, and they have to just trust whoever they run into or talk to. I mean, that's pretty scary, right? The same way if it was your kids, would you trust whoever they talk to? No.
No.
Right? I mean, maybe it worked out for us, not for everyone. But great. Thanks, Ali.
Yeah, thank you so much.